Alrighty, good evening. Welcome to Active Claremont's second event this month. Last week we had a candidate forum, except for a few, let's say, technical details. It went pretty well. This week I think we're going to really just hit it out of the park. And I just wanted to ask you to give a round of applause for my chief roadie, Catherine Mora. And Joe Parecka, who came in at the last minute to really straighten everything out. So we have these about once a month, but we decided to have two this month because it's just that important. And frankly, Active Claremont has that kind of money that we can, sponsor these things. My name is Russ Binder. I am the president of Active Claremont. And in case you're wondering, the shirt comes from the Kermit collection. And so tonight we have the pleasure, the honor, and the privilege of having Cheryl Fiello, who is running for, is it district or area?
District.
District 5 for the Claremont Unified School District. I want to say up front that all of the candidates, whether opposed or otherwise, were invited tonight, and the unopposed one and the counter to Ms. Fiello respectfully and politely declined. So we went with who we had, and so for what you get tonight, you get twice as much of Cheryl, and who doesn't want that? So it's like, Cheryl on steroids. There we go, right? Okay, so the first thing we usually do is say pledge allegiance to the flag. I will say begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I don't think the Beach Boys could do any better on harmony than you guys just did. Okay, so I'd like to jump right into it. And first of all, thank Cheryl for coming to visit us tonight. Her schedule is packed, as you might expect, but I think this is an important way for not only the community to get to visit and understand her better, but for her to communicate with you all. So rather than me talk much more, let's do this. Let's have Cheryl please tell us why you're running and a little bit of an introduction, whatever you'd like our teaming crowd here to know about you. All right?
Great. Thank you. Yeah, all right, I like that. Thank you, guys. First of all, to Russ and to Joe and to Catherine and all of Active Claremont, thank you for having me here. I appreciate the invitation, and I appreciate the time and opportunity to reach out to voters and all of you. I think when I talk about why I'm running for school board, it's kind of a long, there's a short answer and a long answer. And since I have the time and the mic, I'll give you the long answer. I came to Claremont 23 years ago for Claremont High School. For the schools here in Claremont. That's what drew me here. I was recruited as a chemistry and biology teacher at Claremont High School, where I've already actually run into some parents of former students tonight, so thank you for coming. But I worked at Claremont High School and taught there for 12 years. And during that time, I had some really amazing, supportive, involved school board members that actually came into my classroom, observed my teaching, and saw me make meaningful connections with students, and to use technology at a time, I'm from the 1900s, so this is back before iPads and iPhones and social media, and it was a big deal if you had a PowerPoint. Do you remember those days back, again, from the 1900s? And so I really embraced innovation, I embraced change, I embraced technology in my science classrooms. I think science and technology just go so well together. But I had school board members that came in and said, I don't understand what you're doing, but I think there's magic there. I think there's potential. And they just asked me a simple question that stayed with me my whole career, and that was, how can we help? How can we help you grow? And that's just always been a very powerful, motivating experience for me of how can you help? And through that, I, in my career, got one period off to contribute to CHS leadership team, and then eventually another period off to become a teacher on special assignment and become an instructional coach, and it just grew and grew and grew from there. And my career evolved from a classroom teacher to ultimately me becoming the coordinator of educational technology at the district office. So I spent 8 years at the district office working in all classrooms throughout the district. I have been in preschool classes at Vista del Valle. I've been in English classes at San Antonio High School. I've done instructional coaching in 3rd grade classrooms at Condit and 6th grade classes at Sumner Danbury. I have been all over throughout the district. And I think that that also really well suits me to serve on the board, that I already have an understanding of how the school district operates as a whole. I have the perspective of a teacher, but I also understand the unique cultures and differences of each of our elementary schools and can come in running with that. So ultimately, how does that all relate to why I'm running? I'm running because I had a really great experience with the school board. And I very firmly believe that we need a high-functioning, healthy school board that is focused on maintaining high academic performance, supporting the whole child, and keeping the district moving in the right direction. And so in 2019, I actually left CUSD at the calling of my family. I grew up on a dairy farm, a family-owned and operated dairy. And in 2019, my family called me to come back and work for them. And since then, I have just remained involved in education. I've been the school site council chair at Chaparral Elementary, where I have 2 wonderful daughters. So I have 2 elementary-aged children in the district, and that's another reason that I'm running, is I'm very vested in their education and providing opportunities for them and for all students. So that was the long answer.
So in terms of being in Claremont, you're just kind of like getting past the probationary period, or what? I mean, it doesn't seem like you would know it very well.
You guys, you have to tell me if I've passed the probationary period, because this is a town where everybody was born here and came back, and if you ever left, you have returned. So I don't know if I'm ever going to be out of probation.
Okay.
So I did not go to Claremont schools, but I became Claremont schools. So
Very cool. Is it then time for some questions?
Sure, you tell me.
Well, you're the talent. You're the
I'm putting on
You're
the
the
show.
superstar tonight, so I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. Like I said, it's Cheryl night, so there we go.
Okay.
We have a question from the audience to start off with, and it's a short one, but maybe has a long answer. Where do you stand on AB 1955?
Okay. So where do I stand on AB 1955? This is the new law that is passed in California to protect LGBTQ students and prevents school districts or contractors from identifying LGBTQ status of students. So where do I stand on that? The district and the school board have a moral and legal obligation to follow state law, and so we will support state law. I also believe very firmly that this is public school, and it serves all students. And we need to make a space in which all students can come and learn free of fear and discrimination, and that that is the responsibility, regardless of a student's gender identity, religion, race, ethnicity. All of those things, we have a responsibility to provide a space in which every single student can come in and they can receive an education on the California content standards in a safe and welcoming environment.
Nicely done. Okay. I'd like to ask one. When I had my podcast, the wildly popular Claremont Speaks, I interviewed many of the school board folks for the last elections and many other people, and they all said that the quality of the value of living in Claremont is directly related. You can just draw a straight line to the quality of the schools. That's one of the big reasons people want to live here, and that's one of the big, the main aspects for people who do live here. So for Cheryl, what is it you will do when, if elected, to preserve, strengthen, and increase that value?
People are drawn to Claremont definitely because of the schools. We have a very strong reputation of having very high academic excellence and having a very inclusive environment and having our schools very well connected to the community. So first and foremost, as I previously, or as I alluded to, my campaign is really focused on maintaining constructive relationships, engaging the community, being available, and maintaining a healthy, high-functioning school board that does take input from the community. Also of greatest importance to me right now is supporting the post-pandemic student. I think we've entered into a new stage of pandemic recovery. It seems a little bit like we're returning to normal, but we have a lot of recovery to do, a huge amount of recovery. So if we look at academic performance of our students right now, we are not yet where we were in 2019. So if we're looking at 2019 as a baseline, we've lost at least 10 points in mathematics and at least 12 points in achievement in English language arts. Our students just aren't performing that. We are still, as a district, above state and national averages, which is great, but we're not yet where we once were and where we need to be. So in focusing on post-pandemic recovery, one of my primary focuses is getting our students achieving grade level standards again. And I think we need to do that a couple ways, is continuing to support intervention, supporting the work of our teachers on special assignment that are specifically focused at each of our school sites to provide support for students to meet those grade level standards, and identifying those students that need the support and providing that one-on-one intervention. I'm also very supportive of looking at the way we're teaching early literacy for our TK through grade 3 students. Specifically looking at the science of reading. Some of our schools are using some supplemental curriculum. They're using things like Orton-Gillingham and SIPs as intervention tools to address those achievement gaps in our earliest language learners. And I'd like to see that grow and expand and continue throughout all of our sites. I also think that for all of our students, since they came in from the pandemic, we were not prepared for the mental health needs that our students have suffered. I don't think even us as adults are prepared for the mental health needs that we've had since the pandemic. That's not a criticism of Claremont Unified, that is just a state of being. We have students that were facing extreme isolation, and significant developmental delays. I think we're going to even continue to see developmental delays for our TK students that are coming in right now. Even though they weren't in public school during the pandemic, these are students that were born in the pandemic. And there are COVID babies, right? Yeah. And so these are students that lost some very formative experiences early in their life about social interactions with society. They also learned a lot of language like this. Sorry, your microphone's going to be really mad at me now. But you get the point that these students were had masks. That impedes their ability to acquire language and understand language. And so I think we're going to see these impacts happening in language development, academic achievement, in mental health, continuing for the next 15 years as these students move through the educational system. And so we have worked as a district to put mental health supports in place. We need to continue that. We need to bolster that. We also need to be adding in behavioral supports. So I've been hearing loud and clear from teachers that the behavioral needs and disruptions that are going on in classrooms are really hindering the ability of our students to learn and interact sociably with one another. We experiencing bullying and need to put in these social emotional learning supports and continue that and grow that for our students. So that means we need to make connections with more community partners. We need to have more access with our school counselors and school psychologists. We need to increase access to registered behavior technicians. The district is looking at adding some of those right now. I'd like to see one at every single school site. These are technicians that can get in and get ahead and identify student behavior needs before they become disciplinary needs and escalate to that level. And so that's a very long roundabout answer to ultimately connect, how do we strengthen and preserve high quality education, is that this community has very high expectations and very high demands. And I believe we can meet that. We just need to be focused on bringing up that academic achievement, putting in the supports for our students, and continuing to focus on the whole child, which is something that has always been a very Claremont thing, is supporting every aspect of the student, not just their academic needs. We want to see them excelling in the arts. We want to see them excelling at career and technical education. We want to see them excelling in athletics, and bring all of that in.
What is the current state of funding for CUSD? And how will you ensure all students have access to high quality education and the necessary resources to succeed?
The current state of funding for CUSD is a little more grim than it has been in the past. There's a couple reasons for that. So right now the state is facing decreased revenue, and we know that school funding is directly tied to state revenue. So as the state rides the roller coaster, so does education. So that's one factor. Another factor is that CUSD is facing declining enrollment. We're losing about 120 students a year. That is not unique to Claremont. In fact, Claremont has weathered the declining enrollment storm, I think, very well. We have not experienced the loss in student enrollment that other surrounding districts have until now. Declining enrollment is facing the entire state of California. We now have a declining population within California. We all know how expensive it is to live in California, and so we are seeing decreased enrollment. So how does that all tie to funding? Schools are funded through ADA, average daily attendance. And so that means a child in a seat has to be there. So you only receive funding if that student shows up for school. If they don't show up for school, if they've taken a doctor's appointment, a vacation day, a sick day, whatever the reason, the school does not receive funding. The school does not receive funding if the enrollment isn't there. So first and foremost, we have to get student enrollment up, and we have to get students to attend school. Since COVID, our attendance rates have significantly dropped. I think we were consistently roughly about a 97 to 98% attendance rate before COVID. That dropped significantly. Currently, we're at about a 95% attendance rate, which is, again, well above state averages, but it impacts us when we do not have students attending school. So what can we do about that? We need to be doing some attendance pushes and communication with parents to let them know how important it is for students to attend class and to be there. We also, I mentioned the mental health needs. We have students that are dealing with anxiety and depression and finding it difficult to go to school. So we need to be providing supports to those students to get them there. We also need to be providing new and attractive programs that draw students from surrounding districts. Claremont Unified School District has a large proportion of interdistrict transfers. These are students that attend neighboring districts and are drawn to the high quality public education that we provide. And the only way for them to have an interdistrict transfer and attend our schools is if we have a program that their school is not offering. These are great programs like International Baccalaureate, which I had experience myself teaching in, middle years program, and similar types of programs that are attractive to our students. It's also worth noting with the budget that oftentimes I find the community is not aware of how school funding works, and they think that only Claremont taxpayer dollars go to Claremont schools, but actually those dollars go into the big general pot, and then it's reallocated back to the schools based upon that ADA. And then that ADA is allocated by what's called a base grant. So you get a certain amount of money to a school based upon if a student is an elementary age student or a high school student, and then you get supplemental funding, supplemental grants based upon needs of students. So these, you might have heard of like Title I schools. So these are low socioeconomic students or students that have additional needs, foster youth, for example, or homeless students or English language learners. Those all bring in an additional funding to Claremont Unified School District, but we do not qualify for those funds in the ways that our neighbors do. So Claremont Unified School District, as a comparison, is about 33% socioeconomically disadvantaged. Our neighboring district, Upland, is twice that. They're about 67% socioeconomically disadvantaged. Pomona, 91% socioeconomically disadvantaged. That means that they receive much more funding because they have a student population that has additional needs. Also looking at those other populations, English language learners were about 5% English language learners as opposed to 60% in some of our neighboring districts. So what that means is that Claremont Unified as a whole is funded probably about in the lowest 25% of districts in California. We receive low amounts of funding, yet with our geographic location, we need to make sure that we are maintaining salaries and benefits that are competitive with these neighbors in order to recruit and retain high quality professionals. And so that is always a challenge for CUSD. It also means that we have very limited funding and have to be very strategic in using it. So I think it's important to continually communicate to the community what school funding looks like, how it works, how that impacts CUSD, and then be very strategic about our funding. So one thing I think that CUSD has done very well is that we have a very clear strategic vision. It's called the CUSD Commitment. You can go onto the website, take a look at it. It has 6 focus areas, everything from academic achievement, focusing on the whole child, equity and access, parent and community involvement, alignment of the budget and fiscal resources, and now I'm forgetting what the 6th is. Someone might know that. Anyway, there are 6 elements there. And everything that the school district does needs to be aligned to that strategic vision. And so ultimately, I think that was the second part of the question about how we make sure our students have access to a high quality education. We remain focused on that strategic vision and making sure that each of our expenditures is aligned to meeting an objective within that vision, because we have to be very strategic about the limited dollars that we have within Claremont Unified. Did I leave them wrong? Y'all want shorter answers? Sorry. No? Keep on?
Yes, this will all be put up on the website so you can review this as well. I mean, that was a great answer, but had a lot to it. So thank you. That's good. That's a good thing.
I have to keep going back and remember if I answered the question. I went on a tangent.
I'll do our best to keep you on track.
Okay.
This question, I've got 3 different copies of about the same question, so I'm going to try to combine them all into one. The concern is to establish better communication with parents, better transparency. For instance, this one says, currently the only public forum is during public comment at board meetings. However, the board is not allowed to respond. It's probably Brown Act, right? Something like that. And so what would you do to help bridge the gap between the board and the community? The public perception is that there is a lack of transparency and direct communication is not necessarily allowed with the board. And if I understand correctly, the board meetings are not as crowded as this. Mm-hmm. And so to tag onto that, what might you think would be done to get people to come out? Take it away.
Okay,
it's not a short question, but it's all one thing. All one thing.
I'm going to generalize that as transparency and accessibility. Are we good with that? I see the heads nodding. Okay. Well, first of all, I'm going to say I'm here tonight. So I'm here tonight because I'm going to be on your ballots. I feel I need to be accessible. People need to hear from me. I need to be available. I need to communicate. I need to hear the issues. You just heard me say what I think are some issues, but that's my perspective. And some of that is in isolation, that you each have a unique experience within the community, and I need to hear that. I will tell you, I won't have the answers. So some of you said about, public comment and a little bit of frustration that the board can't comment back on that in public comment. That is part of the Brown Act. And that actually allows time to hear what an issue is, internalize it a little bit, and do some research on that. And so I think that that's something that's really important. I think that might be a frustrating process for all of us. We want to instantly know the answer. I don't have all of the answers. I'll tell you that, openly right now, but what I do commit to doing is getting more information. And so I have sort of some pre-formulated thoughts on topics because I have experience with them. I've got 23 years of experience in education as an educator, as a parent, and as an administrator. And so a lot of that forms some of the ideas and thoughts that I have right now, but there are always going to be things where you have to listen and hear what the issue is and be able to do some research and gather that. So I recognize some of that's frustrating. It's frustrating to me too. I want an answer right away, but we need to work through that. That's part of the process. Also with transparency, it's been very surprising to me in interacting with the community how many people don't even know about the resources or understand a school board meeting. They are not as well attended as this room right now. And that they don't understand that all of those materials are posted online. They're all available 72 hours before the meeting. Every document. And you can go through in every single one of those attachments. So the agenda is there, all of the materials are there, and so I think we'd need to do, as a board, a little more outreach and push and let people know that those are there. They're not hidden, they're freely accessible, but we need to be more transparent about those and get some more feedback. I also know from time working within the district that parent surveys that go out are so important. When you get that LCAP survey that gets sent out to the community, please take it, because every single comment that goes through there, I tell you, it is read by hundreds of people. It is read by the school board. It is read by the superintendent. It is read by the principals. It's read by the teachers. That is such a powerful way to give input, and I think a lot of people go, oh, this is this survey, it just goes into the void. It really doesn't. Like, that voice really, really, truly matters and really does inform programs and policy. So I encourage people to get involved that way. What else was in the question there? Transparency. Bridging the gap with communication. I really like, I don't know if any of you guys get that city newsletter that goes out. I really love that. Like, I all of a sudden know about like e-bikes and, you know, all these like great things that are going on, and I think that's a really nice model. I like that CUSD has recently started with a director of communications that's put together. I don't know if you've seen the CUSD Celebrates. I love that too, because it's showing us all of these great stories that are going on at each of our schools and these amazing things that our kids are accomplishing, both in and out of the classroom. And so I think that's a nice start, and maybe we can add on to that of not just CUSD Celebrates, but CUSD Communicates, or I don't know, something like that, you know, that just lets people know what is kind of going on within the community. Also, I've made a lot of effort to be accessible within the community. I attend board meetings. I've been at every board meeting since February, every single one of them, going through every single document and agenda item and looking at those. I have been involved, I've been to community groups to be accessible. I've been to Rotary and Chamber and I mean, just event after event after event, just to reach out to the community, to understand the community, be a part of the community, be involved in the community. I think that's what's necessary of a school board member, just to be there and be accessible, be available, and to listen. Oh, I want to add one more thing to that. Sorry. Because this was about transparency and communication and access. And I have really kind of found that the best solutions to that are actually hearing from you guys. So I would love if you have ideas like, oh, I think this would be a really effective way to communicate. Let me know. Like, I'm interested in that. I want to meet people where they're at. And so if you have ideas, let me know.
One fabulous idea I'd like to suggest is joining Active Claremont.
That's a plug.
And I mean that for all of you here who aren't, but especially Cheryl, because we meet here once a month, and if you want to schmooze and network and hear what people have to say, there's no place better than here, okay? And I say that in almost entire seriousness. All right, and I also wanted to thank you. I had a question here that says, will you be able to attend most meetings? And I think you've answered that you already do. Is that a fair answer?
I want to clarify all meetings, like of the board. Yes, I have been at those. All meetings of all things, I'm going to say no, because I am human. I work full time. I have 2 young children, and I'm running for school board. So, yeah, but school board, absolutely. I have been at all of the meetings, and I will continue to be at all of the meetings. Thank you.
Okay, but that was a pretty direct answer. Thank you. I got two questions here, and they concern Prop 28 funding. One says if CHS and El Roble benefited from these funds already, why are the elementary schools still waiting? What are your thoughts? And can you speak about Prop 28 allocations for CUSD? I understand this is for arts education funding?
Yes.
And the question is, what is it being used for? So I think that's, two on the same topic.
Okay. So Prop 28 funding is for arts education, and I'm gonna put it out there right now that I'm not an expert on all of this. I have been learning about it, as has the district and every other district, because this is brand new funding, and there's a lot that's really unknown about how it looks. So I'm putting that caveat out there right there of the disclaimer that this is probably going to change a little bit. So one of the questions was, how come El Roble and Claremont High School have spent some of that money and the elementary schools haven't gotten it? Well, the elementary schools have gotten the money. They strategically held off in spending any of that funding because there was not clear direction from the California Department of Education yet on how that money could be spent, and that sort of infrastructure wasn't there. So no money has been lost. They still have time to spend that money, but we needed clear direction from the California Department of Education about what it can be spent on and how it can be spent. The last thing that you want to do is go spend the money, have an audit, and find out that you spent it the wrong way and have to pay it back. Okay? So that is not the wisest step. The wisest step is actually to take a pause, make sure that we understand the parameters, because this is new, brand new to the state of California. I will say that with Prop 28 money, Claremont Unified School District is well set to implement an arts plan. Arts have been part of our culture and our DNA throughout this district for as long as I have been in the district. We absolutely value arts integration. And unlike most school districts, we already had an arts master plan. We had SALTs, which are Site Art Lead Teachers. Did I get that wrong, right? Oh, okay. We like to use a lot of acronyms in education, and I forget what all of them are, even myself. So we've had Site Art Lead Teachers for ages. We've always invested in the arts. And so CUSD is actually really well set to move quickly onto Prop 28 because we have an arts plan. And other districts are just now starting to have this conversation of what does an arts plan look like, what can we do with this, and we are primed and ready for it. So I acknowledge it's a little frustrating at first that the elementary schools haven't jumped in and spent that money, but it's happening now, and I think it was a wise choice to wait until we understood the parameters of Prop 28. My current understanding of Prop 28 is that it can be used on salaried employees. It cannot be used on separate consultants, which is some of the model that we were doing. Again, I'm learning as we go along in this. And so that's kind of had to reframe how and when we're implementing that Prop 28 money. At El Roble and Claremont High School, they were able to use some of those funds last year. They are putting in additional classes into the master schedule. I believe a dance class? Yes, is that right? Okay. So that is my current understanding of Prop 28. I imagine if you ask me in 6 months, it will be more complex as we get farther along in implementing Prop 28.
Well done, thank you. I'd like to jump to one that I think is a little bit of a pointed question, and maybe not the easiest to answer, but nonetheless, that's why we're here. How do you feel about schools not being able to inform parents if their child is identifying as the opposite sex?
So this is the same question as AB 1955. I addressed that we have a legal obligation to follow the law in the state of California. At the same time, I think parents are the most valuable, most important part of a student's education and life. I mean, I think there's really, from my experience, seen two factors that really show students succeed is a really strong family and a really great teacher. And you put those two things together and students succeed really well. But we have a legal obligation to protect our students' privacy, and that's what the law says that we need to do.
What would you say to a family whose child is being bullied and is disappointed by the school's process for handling the bully and supporting the victim?
So this question about bullying goes along the lines of the mental health supports that I talked about and behavioral supports, and strengthening the positive behavior intervention and supports that are going on at the schools, and very clearly defining what are expected behaviors of our students, and addressing those head on, utilizing those certified behavior technicians that I talked about addressing behavior, doing check-in and check-out with students before a student's going to go to the monkey bars. If that's a trigger for the student, we're going to talk with that student ahead of time. What are the expectations? How do we expect to behave on those monkey bars? Then observing the child on the monkey bars, and checking in with them at the end. How did that experience go? How were you able to regulate those emotions? And having just those clear behavior expectations and clear behavior supports for our students ties in directly with that. Also, a very strong commitment from site administration in dealing with any incidences of bullying and addressing those head on with the students and families.
Okay. Next one. What plan do you have to keep our students safe in an active shooter situation? What steps can be taken to identify students who might pose a risk to others? Unfortunately, this is a fairly timely question.
Yeah. So each school site should have a comprehensive school site safety plan that takes into account these situations. And unfortunately, we're seeing them more and more. Those plans are in place. Schools have drills that they're repeatedly preparing for those, keeping doors locked and securing those spaces, having a partnership with the Claremont Police Department if we do have an emergency on campus, and dealing with that and dealing with that swiftly, and having communication and plans in place ahead of time with Claremont Police Department. So that's a vital partnership to be having with them. Also having mental health and crisis supports for our students. That is, we're identifying students that are in crisis, that there is a plan for those, and there are supports for them. And part of that including community partnerships, that if a student is experiencing threatening behavior or risky behavior, or even students a suicide prevention plan, and dealing with those very quickly and having supports at the site to deal with those.
Okay. I'm looking for a reaction. We're good? Okay, very cool. Tough room, right?
Tough topics.
How does the board address any disparities in educational opportunities among different student groups, and what would you do to improve that?
One of the key pieces is to start looking at student data and letting data inform those decisions. So we can look at data about what students are participating in various programs. We can look at achievement data of our different subgroups and identify what those gaps are and put in specific plans in place to make resources more accessible to some of our different student groups in order to bring that student achievement up. I had mentioned previously the CUSD commitment, the district's strategic plan, and one of those 6 priority areas is equity and access, and providing supports in place to ensure equity and access for all of our students, that they're all having access to the full educational program. Part of that is putting strength into our multi-tiered systems of support and intervention pieces that are going to target our students that are at highest risk, some of our homeless foster youth, our English language learners, students of different subgroups that are not meeting those grade level targets and expectations, and providing supports to those. Another big piece of that as we transition into secondary is making sure that we have clear communication with parents, all parents, and especially those parents of traditionally underserved populations, and making sure that they have information about college and career readiness and understand those A through G requirements for graduation, to make sure that as a student comes into Claremont High School or San Antonio High School, that they're put on the right pathway in order to get their credits and to meet all of their requirements, and that they have the right academic path in place, that college and career options are available to them, and that communication is happening early and ready.
Awesome, thank you. And we've probably touched on this, but I want to make sure we touch on it directly in response to the question I received. In terms of transparency and accessibility, we know you're transparent and accessible, but the current board needs a little nudge. Are you, I'm just reading what's been written. Are you introducing, or would consider introducing, new forums for parents to interact with the board? And I guess this would be to somehow get around the Brown Act. I don't know, but I mean, or what are we thinking, like happy hour, you know, maybe all go to a, I don't know.
Happy hour with the board.
That's an awesome suggestion, right? But anyway, you tell us, Cheryl. It's the mic is all yours.
Okay. Well, I kind of gave a response to this before. I don't know what else to add about, you know, ensuring transparency, bridging the gap with communication, and then really just being open and listening to what else. I mean, the Brown Act is law. We can't violate the Brown Act. So to be clear on that. And I did acknowledge that sometimes it's frustrating to make a public comment, and that the board has to listen to that and can either ask for clarification or to direct staff. But there are legal requirements in there, and that's not meant to be a boundary to access of the board. It's just there to contribute to the process of that. So we can't violate the Brown Act, but just being accessible and listening. So.
Okay, we understand. I just want to make sure it was directly asked and answered.
I think we had like 4 questions, like all piled together on transparency. So
yeah,
that's definitely a theme.
On a more somber note, we have experience with 2 students committing suicide in the past 2 weeks in the neighbor city of Rancho Cucamonga. What resources, or how will the district support students and parents to prevent this as a community? Frankly, I would just say, what can we do to prevent this, period?
The district has to have a suicide prevention plan. And part of that has a lot of communication with parents. I know I have received the notifications and bulletins for trainings for suicide prevention. And so those are a resource that are available to parents. Again, mental health supports and counseling. The school district has a suicide prevention plan in place that if students are exhibiting some of those behaviors, they're immediately referred to a counselor immediately, a school psychologist, and mental health professionals that are in place, and if necessary, to have emergency services available to those students. You know, I don't know none of us know the circumstances of these two students recently. It is the absolute worst thing that can happen. So I feel for those families. I don't know if they'll ever understand it. It's kind of the worst scenario. So, but again, making outreaches, community partners, mental health supports, letting students know that there are resources available to them, and also letting students know that they are a resource, so that they need to speak up if they have a friend that is exhibiting these thoughts and behaviors, that they need to say something, like that students have the power to save their friend's life.
I think we have one last question from the audience, and then if it's all right, we'll go to closing statement.
Sure.
I know this is going to be a good one. Would you consider rolling out a new anti-bullying pro-kindness curriculum for all CUSD students that is offered in each grade and even offers quizzes, projects, and assignments just like we teach math?
I think that's a great idea. Yeah, I think that's an absolutely fantastic idea. I think that the school district as a whole does need to look at their bullying prevention policy and strengthen that. And I think any resources or curriculum that comes out, we should always be open and receptive to that. I think that's a fabulous idea. I think of all of these questions that have been asked tonight, whether it has to do with bullying or AB 1955 or mental health, that students absolutely deserve and families expect an environment where they feel safe and respected and loved and welcomed, and they can all come in and they can learn. And so that is the primary goal of establishing school culture and setting, making a space where every single student, with whatever issues or supports they come in with, they are welcome, and we provide an environment in which they can thrive and learn.
Okay, I'm going to actually break my rule, and we're going to sneak in one last question. Okay. Someone asked two. I'm going to pick the one I like better because we're up against our time limit. A huge concern is the excessive amount of screen time in classrooms. Our youngest students are starting their day. Our youngest students are starting their days watching learning videos, watching someone read a story, or etc. Our students are as early as 4 years old are on iPads during their already short days at the school. Is the board aware of the detriment screen time has on young, developing minds? Have there been discussions surrounding this issue and concern?
So this is kind of a question that I have a lot of expertise in. I have a master's degree in educational technology and served as the coordinator of educational technology for the district for many years, and am a very passionate advocate for educational technology, with a very pointed caveat, it has to be purposeful. I've always been supportive of technology for the right purposes, and I've provided a lot of professional development and training to teachers throughout the district about talking about different ways to implement technology and ways that are effective, and actually what the research shows of not all technology use is created equal. There are uses of technology that really show improvement of student achievement, and there are those that don't. It's not to say that those that don't are always bad. They're not. Some of those are actually gateways to build scaffolding skills and work their way up. And so I believe that not all screen time is equal. And so we need to be looking at the ways that we're implementing technology. And I think that technology absolutely needs to be in the classroom in order to help our students be college and career ready. We all know that technology is ubiquitous throughout our lives now. It is everywhere. And I think even us as adults would agree that not all of our screen time is created equal. Some of it is very productive and effective, and others are not. And so part of that starts with, I think about that with, modeling with my students. Is my cell phone the first and the last thing that I look at during the day? My children see that. So I also think that even beginning in our TK classrooms, there are very effective uses of technology in there. And especially looking at AI and adaptive learning and how technology is now providing more individualized access to education and support, and actually helping us provide intervention to our students. That's really, really powerful when you have a student, or when a teacher has anywhere from 24 to 37 students in a classroom. Some of that technology helps give some of that leverage in giving those students that on-demand what they need at that moment. And so I think we would just have to look at purposefully what that activity is and why. Even in our earliest students, for them to see somebody reading a book and to have the words be highlighted along with that, there is research that supports that with phonemic awareness and working with fluency and working with vocabulary and comprehension and connecting all of that.
Okay, very good. Parenthetically, I find Netflix right before going to bed is the most surefire cure for insomnia. Especially if you watch like a teen movie or something. Okay. Thank you all for your great questions. This is, I think, exceeded all of, let's say, my expectations. And you guys have been really great to not only come out, ask such good questions, and I wanted to thank and give you an opportunity for a round of applause to Cheryl for coming out. To have Cheryl, if you don't mind, kind of give us a capper to the whole event, your closing thoughts, your final shot, and away we go. All right?
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank you guys for coming tonight. It's great to have such a great turnout and to have access to voters, and so I'm appreciative. Thank you, Active Claremont, for allowing me this opportunity to have a town hall tonight. I know that it was kind of questionable at some point if we'd be able to have this, and so I appreciate any opportunity to get out there. I hope you learned a little bit more about me. I'm sure I'm going to go back and stay up all night long of thinking of 1,000 different ways I should have answered these questions. So I ask for a little bit of your grace and understanding of it's a little nerve-wracking. But I hope you understand that I'm approaching this run for school board with a great deal of experience, expertise, qualifications, and a whole lot of love and appreciation for our students and our families and our educators. And I am really focused on maintaining a really strong, high-functioning school board that can focus on really high expectations and putting resources in place to help our educators meet those high expectations of our community. So I appreciate your time, and I look forward to doing some really great work for our community. Thank you.
And as a capper, I'd like to offer you the opportunity to let all our fine people here and the folks that are going to be watching soon, I promise, on the internet, how to get a hold of you, what's your website, what's your email, if they have further questions, how to contact you, and whatever else you'd like them to know. What's your TikTok, what's your, I don't know.
Thank you. So you can get a hold of me on my my website is www.fiello4CUSD, so that's the number 4, so FIELLO 4CUSD.com. You can access more information about me there and ways to engage. I also have it linked, I have a QR code there on the back and a little flyer and stuff that if you need to take that with you, you're welcome to do that. I also have some signs there you're welcome to take. My email address as well is on the website, and my phone number as well. So you can get a hold of me in any of those ways. And I just ask you to vote Cheryl Fiello on November 5th. Appreciate it. Ballots go out soon. One other thing too there, you mentioned I am on Facebook and Instagram, so you can search for Cheryl Fiello, or again, they're all linked on the website there if you need a direct link for those. Thank you.
No, actually, thank you. You've been wonderful tonight. I think this, again, I think this went off way better than I expected, and it's all to your credit.
Thank you for having me.
And the audience. So that'll conclude the Q&A for tonight. And I want to do two things. Encourage you to join Active Claremont if you're not already. Some feedback, if you please, on who and what you'd like to see in the future. We have these series every month, and we're always looking for interesting speakers to bring crucial information to the Claremont public. All right? Well then, so thank you and good night. And again, the signs are in the back.